Kim Lewis turned down a $400,000 offer and betted on herself. Some of us listening right now won't even turn down $400.
And I think whenever you don't know your value, you will always be undersold.
Because I feel like that moment gave us what we got now. This version of you, this version of saying, you know what, I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to start this crowdfunding.
Whew.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are at the place to be. You already know we're back on the podcast. We bring you the most spectacular guests. And today's guest, you probably seen her on Shark Tank or perhaps one of Oprah's favorite things. The one and only Kim Lewis is on the show today. What's going on, fam?
Yo, what's up? Well, I feel like I'm on the real radio show.
Hey, listen, that's what we try to do. We try to give you that high value, high caliber, make it the most lit as possible. And I'm excited for this one because, you know, when we think about Schools Over Now What, we have had the ability to bring iconic guests, but most importantly, everybody has like something unique that they're doing that everyone can learn from. And our audience can learn so much about what you've built with Curlmix. And I know right now they are already in the show notes. They're clicking on your social media profile. They're already following you. But for those of our audience right now who are just now hearing about Kim Lewis, take us back to like the young you growing up. Like where are you from and what was like your curiosity level as a young kid?
So I went to school, Morgan Park High School, south side of Chicago. I was in all the extracurriculars and all the honors programs, all the IB, AP, everything. I woke up I left the house to go to school at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't get home till like 6 or 7 o'clock. So I spent my days at school. And to that point, I
said, man, you spent your whole day at school?
My whole day. And I had to, school started at like 7:30. So I had to take the bus at like 6:45, 7 o'clock at the latest. And I would get to school around 7:35, 7, whatever. School started 7:45. So I had to be up at 5. Jeez. I honestly think that the person I was in high school, I had to be more responsible than the person I was in college. Because getting up at 5 and then playing sports, and then sometimes I would have 2 days where you'd have practice in the morning and in the evening.
Facts.
So that meant I had to be at school at like 6 o'clock for practice, 5 a.m. for 5:30 for practice, which meant I was getting up at 4, you know what I mean? And getting dropped off for something crazy. So like, I'm like, who is that? Because college, I didn't pick no classes until after 9 o'clock. So college was very different. And I wasn't playing sports, but I did have to take care of my own health and stuff. So high school, I was very much an honor student. I wasn't the best in my class, but I was in the IBAC program. I'm sorry, the IB program, International Baccalaureate. And so essentially they had maybe 60 students in the class in my grade that were in that program. And there were 4 grade levels. So let's say there's, I don't know, 4 times one. So 240, 300 people in this program. Wow. And then of all of us, there's like 4,000 kids in my high school. So it was like a select program. And you're taking special French classes, special biology classes, all the things. And you're having a different set of tests in addition to the AP test that everybody else would have to take. So IB was like a level of AP or whatever. But I also was on the basketball team for pretty much like 2 to 3 years. And then I was on band for the other 2 to 3 and the captain of soccer team for a couple of years. And then, I don't know, I was an honor society member and I was in the French club and I was like doing
all everything. Of them. all of them.
My goal, Shawn, was just to get out the hood. Like I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I was one of 5 kids. We all had different dads. And my mom loved us and took great care of us. And we grew up with my grandparents also, and we lived with them for a very long time. But I didn't know anybody I only know 1 or 2 people who went to college. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know any millionaires at all, any entrepreneurs at all. And my thoughts were, I'm just going to be the perfect corporate worker bee. And I'm going to go to corporate business, make some money. And so I was trying to get in the University of Michigan for college, and I ended up getting waitlisted. And I applied to Hampton. I got into Hampton, but I got no scholarship money. I was like, well, if I ain't getting no scholarship money, I can't go. So, because I can't afford this. And I remember at UMich, when I finally got off the wait list, they were like, it's $10,000 for the summer program. I was like, $10,000 for the summer program? And it's only for Black and brown students that came from low income areas, which I was like, this kind of racist, you know? Yeah. And so, yeah. And I was like, so U of I, they gave me money and it was in state and they said, yes. And I can be in the College of Business within 1 year. And I was like, well, that's where I'm going. So I went to University of Illinois.
Wow. Wow. There's so many layers to kind of unpack, right? I think the first one that comes to my mind is I think you said one of five children, right? And like having a mentality of wanting to get out of the hood. And I know so many people right now listening right now, they're still in that environment. And coming from Chicago, I can imagine before we get to like this amazing company that you've built, like how did you see yourself though, like in a different environment?
I mean, so I went to public school, first through eighth grade, and I went to Windows Elementary School, which is not a fancy elementary school at all. Um, and I say that meaning like it was normal for my classmates to be pregnant in eighth grade, you know.
Wow.
Um, and then like, and they were my friends, and so, and this is not a knock to them or their parenthood or whatever. This is just what was my reality. And I was like top student there, right? But my teachers were like, she's too smart to go to the neighborhood school. Please
Mm,
send her to a better high school. Um, and again, these are my friends, so it's not like I'm like, I don't want to be my friends, but I do want to get out of the hood more than anything. And so, and I say this saying like my neighbors are drug dealers, you know. I have friends who were shot and killed as a kid, on the bus.
mm.
I grew up in like the hood, you know, and so and I say that because some people think like, oh, what you mean like the hood? And I'm like my uncle's the neighborhood alcoholic hood, like you
Mm.
know, like that.
Hmm.
Like yeah,
Like,
it's a
like
country down the
people
street.
were dying hood.
Yes, yes, but I did have a loving family. So that was like that's the only difference. I had a loving, engaged, active family. I didn't meet my dad till I was 13, you know.
Wow.
And these are not things I like I mention very often. But yeah, I didn't meet my dad till I was 13. And then when I met him, he had money. And I was like, I know you effing lying. Like, you know, like
Where you get this from?
where you been? When I went to his house in Texas, I had other siblings who I love, by the way. I love dearly, have a good relationship with. But he had a baby grand piano in his house.
Whew.
Could you imagine?
Where did
Like
this come from? Do you know how to play anything?
he did.
Oh, wow.
So it was a, and so that shift, meeting him and seeing the money he had access to, did
Mm,
kind of. I didn't know anybody who was a millionaire or an entrepreneur, but I did see the money that he had and what he was connected
mm.
to, and I was like, okay. And then he did help me pay for when I did meet him. He paid for my group trip to go to France when I was like 15 in a French club.
Oh, wow.
Um, and that kind of changed my life because that experience, you know, if you take a little girl out the hood who ain't never been nowhere and you show her Europe,
Mm,
one of the wealthier countries outside of America in the world. Sorry, I said countries, continents. But and then now you go to Paris, and so you're in France, and then you travel to Toulouse, France, and you go to Barcelona, Spain, and it was like a 10-day trip over spring
wow.
break, and it blew my mind. And I was like, I want to be fluent in French. I want to travel the world. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to make my own money. I didn't know what entrepreneurship was, right?
Mm, mhm.
And I'm gonna go to business school because my dad majored in business. My dad is in business, and he makes money. So I'm gonna be like him. Now that being said, me and my dad do not have a good relationship, so this is not me bragging on him, but this is the my first inkling that there's more. You know what I
Mm,
mean?
absolutely. I love this story. I like so much about this. There's this thing, Kim, that I talk about often that I really believe you find out what you're really capable of and what's possible for you right about 14 or 15. It's like these aha moments. And for me, at the age of 14, my brother went off to college and he became this big nightlife party promoter. And when he did that, I went to college. I went to North Carolina A&T at the age of 14. I was standing on couches, popping bottles with artists like Rick Ross, Young Jeezy. At that age, it was exposure that then made me go back home at 14 and throw a high school graduation party and make $6,000. And the reason why I'm sharing that story is because it makes me think about where your mindset was at that age of 15, curious, being exposed. I think the key word is exposure. And your dad, he sounds like, he didn't do too much up to a certain point, but at that certain point, he probably gave you one of the biggest gifts a parent could even give anybody. And that is allowing for you to see something. And I'm so glad he
Mhm.
let that happen because look at what, you've done, right? And tell me, I'm curious for you, as you're 15 years old, you're seeing Europe, you're seeing this other side of the planet. You're kind of getting the inkling and the itch for entrepreneurship, not wanting to make money yet or knowing how to make money yet. What made you say, you know what, I got something in me that I can do, that I can create, and even get an idea for a brand? Because curious, a lot of entrepreneurs, the thing we get known for sometimes isn't the first thing that we created. So was there something else, or was it always like Curlmix?
No. So the first thing I made, I didn't make much money for, but the first thing I made was in high school. I didn't have earrings. And women, if we don't have our earrings on, a lot of us are like, we not dressed for the day. Like, we not cute.
Facts. It's a big
So
deal.
my teacher had these assorted paper clips, like all the colors, white, blue, pink, purple, green, whatever. And I had made like these cylinder type paperclip earrings where I hung off like maybe 30 clips around a circle. And then I attached them on the bottom, and then I put a clip on the top to hang them from my ear. And I had like these cylinder multicolored paperclip earrings, and like, but that was just who I was, right? And people were trying to buy them from me. So I had like those earrings, and I had like these bottle cap belt that I had bought from like, I don't know, Abercrombie and Fitch or something. I don't even know. But that was my first foray into creating something. So I caught those Kimmy clips. And then I went to college, studied marketing and supply chain management. And I studied supply chain management because all the Black girls were studying marketing. And I was like, dang, if I want to get a job out of college, I need to have some more skills or hard skills. And I'm using air quotes because this is what they say is hard skills, right? To get a job. And so supply chain management is like industrial engineering, it's logistics, it's boring, but it pays more, right? Yep. People with supply chain management degrees start out making 70, 80, 90K graduating, whereas marketing degrees, you're making 50K, 50 to 60K at the time anyway. And I remember taking a trip. I didn't take this trip. My professor of Entrepreneur 101, Paul Magelli, he took a trip with some of the students to Italy. And while he was there, this man bought a Ferrari and had it shipped back to the United States.
Oh, wait a minute. Slow it down. Is this a professor buying a Ferrari on a trip?
Now, here's the thing. He's the only one that don't have no PhD or master's degree in the subject that he's teaching. He was just a successful entrepreneur. And I was like, I was like, if you're good enough, the rules don't apply to you. That was the lesson.
The bar.
And two, he has made way more money than everybody else is teaching. And he's come back to do this for fun and fulfillment.
Oh, man.
And I was like, I want to do what he's doing. Like he built a business. I need to figure out how to do that. Now, mind you, I still got to graduate, but I had my first IT class. So we had to build an app, and we had to wireframe an app, and I wireframed an app for natural hair. It was called the Natural Hair Academy. And then once I graduated, I wanted to see this app to fruition. I did get a job as a district manager in training at Aldi. So it's a grocery chain, and I was doing that after graduation, but I wasn't happy. And it was like my first corporate job experience, but it was just very exhaustive. I was working like 12-hour days at least, and my manager told me I was terrible at my job. I wasn't terrible, but if I'm supposed to be there at 6 a.m., they wanted me to be there at 5. And if the store wasn't looking the way it needed to look at 6 o'clock, they wanted me to stay and fix it. And I'm like, I was like, I've been here 12 hours. I want to go home. And they was like, no, ma'am. And so I was like, okay, this is not the place for me. And I was reading 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And I was like, I was crying because I had developed carpal tunnel tube. I was stocking the freezers and things like that. And so it started banging up against my wrist. And that meant that my whole arm was numb from shoulder to fingertips for hours on end, like all over through the night. And so that was kind of scary. I thought my arm was going to fall off. And I remember telling my manager, and he was like, you don't have carpal tunnel, you're fine. And I was like, what? I'm like, I can't even do my hair. That was crazy. And so I knew I didn't want to do that. So I quit that job, and then I signed Tim, who also, he's on High School Sweetheart, signed him up to be a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And then he ended up winning $100,000 from that. And then that was our income for the year. So I ended up I was able to quit that job and focus on entrepreneurship and build that app that we started building.
Man, you got so many layers to your story. I feel like I use a lot of hip hop terminology, and people that follow me, you guys already know it. It's almost like battle rap. When you start talking, I'm like, slow it down, bring it back. Like it's bars, and there's so many different things to unpack there. I kind of want to stick to one thing that I think our audience will really, really hone in on, and that is looking at a situation in an environment, being curious enough to speak up, but also being curious enough to ask certain questions and knowing it's possible for you. So the professor that went and got the Ferrari, a lot of people would zoom past that. That is unusual. I'll tell you one thing that, I wish that people had got a better understanding when I left corporate. Prior, to doing this podcasting and talent management and all these amazing things, I used to be a brand manager for Target. And very similar to your professor, I took a break too. Not a trip break, but Kim, check this out. I took a lunch break. I got so irritated. I took a lunch break, Kim, and I went and bought a Porsche. And I came back. Your face is priceless. It was a Porsche Panamera. I still have it. It's my favorite car of all time. I always wanted it. But at the time when I bought the Porsche Panamera, Kim, I did it because I was full on entrepreneurship. I had already had everything set up to leave and chuck up the deuces and put in my notice. And there was nobody that was curious enough to ask the questions or have the insight that you had to see that it's possible. So if you're listening to the Kim Lewis story right now, what are the aha moments that are right in front of you that you just need to ask about, that you need to see what's really, really possible for you? And also too, how can you utilize an opportunity to maybe fund or invest? So you mentioned, we should all be millionaires. What was the show that you mentioned that your husband was on?
Oh, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Big deal show that we've all watched, right? And took that investment and moved on. So what was the following step? What was the next thing after you did that when it was like, you know what? This could be a real thing? Because a lot of times people start entrepreneurship, but they don't know if it's legit, right? What was that? Okay, this could be a real thing moment for you.
It was the beginning of the natural hair movement. People didn't have any formal education around what to do with their hair. And I was like, let me start a niche social network, like a social network for natural hair. And that was like the plan. Now, know what I know now, do not start niche social networks. They don't work. That's like that's literally the common phrase, but I spent my own money and figured that out, learned a lesson the hard way back in 2013, 2014.
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing was to pitch. Let's do these Black Enterprise pitch competitions, National Black MBA pitch competition. Let's see if we can win one of these competitions and get some money for the business. And then I remember that summer after college watching Who Wants to Be a Millionaire with Tim, and he literally answered every single question right for like 2 hours. Wow. And I was like, I ain't never in my life seen nobody. I can't answer 2 or 3 questions right in a row on this show, period. Wow. And I was like, and he was captain of academic decathlon. Like he was already brilliant. He had like a perfect score in reading on the ACT. I was like, you need to be on this show. I was like, he's like, Kim, this is a waste of time. Like, this is just a lottery. Like, there's no chance. I'm like, I don't care what you say. I'm booking your ticket. I'm booking your flight. I'm applying. I'm sending your application for the show. You're going. And he goes and he tests in the top 10% of test takers of the 200 people that go to take the test. Wow. And then that was really just like 3 people. And then they took them back to do like an on-camera interview. And then while we were at a pitch competition for National Black MBA, we had just got cut from the top 10 for the final rounds. And he got the call that he was going to be on the show. And so that's when we were like, oh my God, ecstatic. And they're like, aren't you sad that you guys didn't make it to the next round? We're like, nope. He's going to be a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
That's crazy. That's such a powerful story, such a blessing at the same time on how you guys identify things, right? You identify there's an opportunity in the health and also in the hair care and opportunities, and your husband being on the show. Like, you're a good person in identifying opportunities. You're also a good person in understanding, okay, it's time to switch things up. And what I did my little research, right? We do our research here. I want you to walk us through something, right? Can you walk us through like the journey of like how Curlmix like transitioned from like a DIY box with curly hair to like launching your own line of products? I think we will find a lot of interest in that.
So this is so funny. We haven't even gotten to Curlmix, which is my main moneymaker today. And the business that I've done all these amazing things with, 32 million in sales, 10 million in funding raised, all the things. But it did start with the Natural Hair Academy, that niche social network app. We closed that after 2 years, but I picked up a lot of skills. So if you are getting out of college, the best thing you can do for yourself right now is to level up your skill set, because the best founders know how to do everything. Ooh. And if you ain't got no skills right now, you got to get some, because you ain't got the money to pay people. And unless you get the money to pay people, you're gonna have to learn how to do it yourself. So I learned video editing, I learned photography, I learned how to use Photoshop at the time. Now I got Canva. We didn't have that before. Um, I learned I was going to all these events, talking to people at expos. I learned how to sell in real time. I knew if I was talking to a person if they were gonna buy my product or not. All these different things. Like I was doing everything myself, and making no money because I was also married. So Tim, after the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, he was working at Starbucks actually for like
Wow.
a few months. I worked at a portrait studio when I quit my job at Aldi. So I started making $10 an hour, saying Google Gaga babies. And then he was making $9 an hour serving coffee. And then eventually we left to go to Atlanta, and then he picked up tech, and then he started working in tech. And because he's still brilliant, even though like he couldn't get a
Yeah.
good job. And so he started working on tech, and I started working on a business. So we had a partnership from very young, and that was really helpful for us and cannot go understated. Um, when you have someone working full time to maintain the income for both of you while the other person's working on the business, that allows the person who's working on the business to make mistakes and to not have all the pressure on them to be able to pay the bills. So that was helpful. Then we started Curlmix, I want to say maybe in 2015, as a do-it-yourself box for curly hair. I did that for 2 years. The margins on the box are 30%, but the margins on regular hair care products are about 90%. And
Mm.
so I knew that we couldn't keep doing that. So we had to pivot the business. And then we saw that our flaxseed gel, literally the flax seeds that you normally eat, that you put in a smoothie or something like that, when
Yep.
you boil them, you get a really gooey gel. We were one of the first people to put that gel in a bottle and sell it. So we were able to sell it for the same price as the box, but we had 90% margins. And then we pivoted the business to focus on that. So that was the year we ended up being on Shark Tank in 2018. And then we were on Shark Tank in 2019. In 2018, we made our first $1 million. Then we were on Shark Tank in 2019. And then in 2021, we raised 4.5 million in equity crowdfunding from our customers. And then in 2022, we did 10 million in revenue. And there's a lot of stuff I have glossed over that in that story. But since we focused on like the high school elements for so long, we probably won't get into all the other things.
And now what you said, what you said is, Kim, at some point, an audience, you guys let us know, by all means, either leave a rating, leave us a comment, or directly tell Kim. We're gonna get it back for part 2, but I don't want to like skip past some of this crazy highlight stuff, right? The ability to, one, tell your husband you should be on this show, pitch him on that show, get on that show, then say, hey, look, let's go do this thing. This thing makes good amount of revenue. Then pitch yourself to be on Shark Tank. And our audience is not, they are so used to hearing the word Shark Tank because we've had like the casting producer, Mindy Zimrick, on the show. We're very familiar with a lot of people over there. And we know how much of a hard time it is to pull that off. So I don't want to skip past that. But what I do want to really focus on is the ability to bet on yourself. And I think you know where I'm going with this one. Is that you were not only on Shark Tank, but you turned down a significant offer. Guys, listen to this. Kim Lewis turned down a $400,000 offer and betted on herself. Some of us listening right now won't even turn down $400. So tell us a little bit about like just like the importance of like betting on yourself, and what did you learn at that moment? Because I feel like that moment gave us what we got now. This version of you, this version of saying, you know what, I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to start this crowdfund. Elaborate a little bit more on that for us.
Whew. I realized that by the time we ended up on the show, I had some crazy things happen. So being on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, me and my high schools, I've been in a lot of I'm the only one type of situations, right? So while I was excited to be on Shark Tank, I also realized the value that I brought to a situation. And I think whenever you don't know your value, you will always be undersold. You know what I mean? People will always get a discount. And so by the time I ended up on Shark Tank, we had invested, we were on our way to making our first $1 million. So we already knew we were going to make $1 million. We had already worked corporate jobs that were making hundreds of thousands in annual salary. We were already on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and Tim won 100,000 there. Like I had seen larger amounts of money. And so that wasn't the first time I'm, discussing a few $100,000 investment, right?
Facts.
And so I think it would be a mistake to the first time you get in front of a billionaire to be discussing something so big that's so big to you but so small to them, But But that's just one piece of it, right? But before we had gone on Shark Tank, I had taken an executive MBA program class. It was like a week long in Northwestern. And basically I learned about BATNA, which is what they call the better agreement. I'm sorry, the better alternative to negotiating an agreement. So essentially, if you and the person you're negotiating with can't come to an agreement, what are your walkaway numbers? What
Mm.
and then what are you gonna do at those walkaway numbers? These are the numbers. If it doesn't happen, I'll go and call Sally, right? And so for the show, I did not want to give up more than 15% of the company. Anything about the industry,
Mm.
and you can't really help us, and you wouldn't budge on percentage. I was like, this is a no-brainer to me. I was like, it's a no for me, dog. Uh,
So,
only a certain generation knows what I'm talking about when I say that, right? It's the Randy from American Idol. It's a no for me, dog.
hey, listen. Because to someone watching, right, with not the experience you have, the knowledge you have, and not know what you know, they would have jumped for that. I think
I interviewed so many other founders who were on Shark Tank.
yeah.
And one of them was like, they had agreed to a royalty deal. And they were like, that was the worst decision I ever made because I'm paying one of these sharks and I didn't even pay myself.
Oh my goodness. Man,
And these people are rich. They don't need your money. You know what I mean? You need your money. So I was just like, I got to go home with this business. This business is not for play. Like Shark Tank is about making good TV. I got to go home and make some money,
Absolutely. And you know what's also so important, I think, to understand is knowing your worth, right? Knowing your value, and then saying, you know what, listen, I've seen money. I've seen this before. If you don't get anything from this episode, that exposure is key, right? I want to talk about something, though, that I think is important as well that we haven't talked about on our podcast, and that is like crowdfunding. I feel like crowdfunding is something that, when done correctly and talked about, it's almost like being a part of a mission. Like, tell us a little bit about like crowdfunding and particularly your crowdfund. How can we be a part of it? Obviously, we're liking what we're hearing. You're betting on yourself, and a lot of us want to bet on ourselves. Tell us a little bit about that and what that experience has been like.
So there's crowdfunding for rewards and there's crowdfunding for equity. Crowdfunding for rewards is like your Kickstarters, your GoFundMes, your Indiegogos, your Patreons, etc. Like you're getting some kind of reward back. It might be a t-shirt, it might be a thank you, it might be a special product that they're launching, whatever. And then you have crowdfunding for equity, where you know how in the stock market, when you buy shares or you buy stock, you're actually getting equity in the company. Well, you can do that. But the difference with crowdfunding is that you don't have to be an accredited investor to angel invest. So, for example, before the Jobs Act in 2012, if you wanted to invest in an Uber or an Apple before they were really big and mainstream, you had to have a net worth of, I think it was like almost like $2 million or an income of $250,000 a year, which is kind of crazy because you can go to the casino and spend your whole paycheck, right? Like you can go gamble away your whole paycheck. But in order to invest in these companies, you have to make a certain amount of money, which to me is just gatekeeping, right? For whatever
100%.
reason, our government doesn't want us to be involved in the early stages of big companies. And so in 2012, under the Obama Act, Jobs Act, they basically allowed unaccredited investors, everyday citizens who make 50, 60K annually, to be able to invest in companies for as little as $100. And for a long time, the maximum was only $1 million. But in 2021, that number changed from 1 million to 5 million. And now that makes it very interesting for me because there's a lot of diligence that goes into doing that as a company. So I have to file a report with the SEC. I have to go through an audit, a financial audit of 2 years of my financials and make sure they're in GAAP accounting, which is generally accepted accounting principles. For all my accounting folks out there who are just taking their classes, I wish I had paid more attention back when I was in college, learning about GAAP in my accounting classes, because that was my first time really understanding that and to that level of that depth in 2021. Now I'm a pro. Now I feel like I can be a little mini CFO for some folks. But I did that. And so people are able to own equity in our company so that if we ever sell the company or go public, then if it's for a higher value than what you invested in, you could get a return. So you could get a 2 to 3x, maybe more return. If you put in $250, you might get back $750. It all depends on how much we can sell for. Now, of course, we are a startup and I can't make any promises, right? I can't guarantee any results. We could fail just like any other business. I mean, Silicon Valley Bank, they went to zero, right?
Yep.
But we could also succeed, Shea Moisture sold for $1 billion. And I would love for that to be my story. So,
man, listen, as you're talking, right? And I'm pretty sure our audience is the same way. And guys, we're going to find it. We're going to make sure we have it in the show notes. Click the link so you can be a part of this.
WeFunded.com/Curlmix.
Say it one more time because I'm already, listen, you're talking. I'm like, man, where's this site at?
WeFunder.com/Curlmix.
I love the strategy. I love what you guys are doing. I think it's so needed. I think there's so many different layers of your story that make people fall in love with the journey that we see ourselves in it, and excited for the next chapter for you guys. So guys, if you're listening, make sure you do that. I want to ask you the question to wrap this thing up, Kim. I want to ask you the question that we've asked every single person that has been on this platform. And that is, if you were that person who's about to walk across that stage and graduate, or perhaps you don't even got a degree at all, and you're asking yourself the question of the podcast, school's over, now what? What advice would Kim Lewis give?
I wish the first thing I had done was start a Shopify store and learn how to sell anything. You could be selling pretty pebbles that you found by the lake near your house for $2. Whatever it is, figure out how to source those pebbles, get you some photos, and figure out how you can market them. And you might be selling rocks. I'm using rocks because that's the simplest thing. People buying rocks now. Okay, they buying crystals. Okay, these emerald and zirconia, whatever, they buying these rocks. Okay,
Facts.
And I wish I would have built the skill of learning how to sell online, because to me, that is the core of everybody's business. Amazon's the largest company, one of the largest companies in the world, and 50% of all online shoppers are shopping on Amazon, right? If you learn how to sell online, you will be free forever. you will generate your own income forever, and you won't need nobody. And I wish I had started that at 20, 21, 18, 19,
Powerful words, powerful advice. So much game in this episode, Kim, and we're going to definitely have you back for a part 2. For those of us that are listening and that are ready to just go ahead and follow you, can you give us all of your social media platforms and where we can find you?
I post every day on social, business stuff and fun stuff and lifestyle stuff. So Kim Lewis CEO on Instagram is where that's me actually posting and commenting and engaging. And then my brand, Curlmix.com. And I have a second brand, 4C Only, for really kinky hair. So just search 4C Only if you got 4C hair. And then, our WeFunder.com/Curlmix. And then, if my website is KimLewisCEO.com if you want to pitch me or something, or, have me come speak or something like that.
I love it, guys. Make sure you're following her on socials, be a part of the crowdfund. And those of you that have been listening, always remember, dream it, believe it, go out and get it.